Well, guys, I gotta ask you, is anyone in my audience gonna go see Snow Woke and the 7 diversity hires? Yeah, of course you're not, because you're in my audience. You guys know what good cinema is. You'll be joining me in the theater seeing Oppenheimer in a couple days. But until then, I'm sure you've heard the news about the incredible Snow White and the 7 Magical Creatures live-action adaptation from Disney. Well, Piers Morgan decided to bring on a legit dwarf, the homeboy that played Hornswoggle in the WWE, as well as some raging lefty lunatic who apparently has a podcast that I've absolutely never heard of, and when you look at him, you pretty much think South Florida gay. And yeah, they got to have a bit of a debate and a dialogue, and we're going to take a look at that video. We're going to do some commentary on it, cover over it. I've seen it, so it's not really a reaction, but I do want to bring this to your guys' eyes. I also want to thank the YouTuber Bristolian Dave for posting this clip to Twitter. That way I could, research and get the full context. So thank you, Bristolian Dave. Go subscribe to his channel if you haven't. Let's get into it.
Kind of mostly agree with what you're saying. And yeah.
Now you're... Sir, that's just...
Alright, so for some quick context before we actually get into watching this, I want to let you know that Dwarf Homeboy here is talking about how, the Snow White and the 7 dwarves should remain just that, 7 dwarves. It shouldn't be 7 magical creatures and none of them be dwarves. His whole argument is that roles are being taken from dwarf actors who, let's be honest, don't exactly get a whole lot of roles to begin with on account of their size, their stature. There ain't a lot of room in Hollywood movies for the little folk, right? And then White Homeboy on the other here, the white savior that is the woke left, he is throwing a fit because the word dwarf, it is bad. It's a negative stereotype. When Hornswoggle here is talking about how, no, that's what we are. We're dwarves. Also, let's not forget the context that, Snow White and the 7 dwarves. Dwarves are not in Snow White like they are in this movie. Like, this video doesn't cover it, so I just want to throw that out there. The dwarves in Snow White were like the mythical creature sort of dwarves, swords and sorcery and shields, like Tolkien-style stuff. That's not the same thing as a real-life dwarf. They're genuinely magical creatures, but not the way magical creatures that Disney wants to define them as today, because a magical creature can be anyone. We're going to have a black woman dwarf that isn't really a dwarf. My point is, now you guys have the context, let's get into it.
Taking a pot shot there.
No,
by saying,
it is absolutely taking a pot
with
shot. But I do agree with what you're saying. I completely agree with your point of view, and I think that's really important. But I can only speak from my experience. And
now, he says he agrees with him and his point of view, but the thing is, Piers Morgan up to this point has said the exact same thing, is that roles are being taken from dwarf actors that should not be taken from dwarf actors. So look how, South Miami homo here starts talking about how he agrees with the little man, but doesn't agree with Piers Morgan, despite the fact that little man and Piers Morgan have said the same damn thing.
As a gay man, I know that growing up, I witnessed gay people being villains in movies when I was...
7 dwarves aren't...
Okay, just about, seeing gay people as villains. So someone, give me some movies from the 80s and 90s where the villain was a homo. I can't think of any off the top of my dome. I mean, yeah, sure, maybe they're out there, but I can't expressly think. I didn't go back and watch the Indiana Jones movie trilogy recently and think, oh man, you're right, the bad guys in all these movies were gay. I mean, they were Nazis, so there's probably a whole lot of gayness there, but like different kind of gay. Point is, I don't remember a time when being gay in a movie was like a villainous role. I remember a time when, Habib was the people who liked to bomb us in 9/11, where they were the bad guys in movies, and before that, I remember when the Russians were always the bad guys. I don't really remember a time when gays were bad guys.
Villains.
And that I think stereotypes are really important to
What stereotype do you think
and
they
actually,
represent?
in the universe of Snow White, wouldn't it be better if dwarves
I don't feel
are...
This isn't a part of this about the stereotype.
Right.
This is about roles that were made for people of my stature that don't have the chance to go out for other roles normally.
But you, James,
so
you want to stop Dylan getting a role in a Hollywood film.
I am not going to get into an attack on a dwarf.
You don't want a dwarf actor to land a role playing a dwarf part.
Listen, a dwarf...
So notice how he said he doesn't want to get in on an attack against a dwarf actor. Yeah, because he knows if he wants to keep himself logically and philosophically consistent, that he has to agree with the dwarf actor. Because this guy, well, yeah, this is the oppressed minority that I'm fighting for, so I can't get into an attack with him, even though he fundamentally disagrees with him, even though he thinks that the term dwarf is offensive and that putting dwarves in a movie called Snow White and the 7 Dwarves, which depicts dwarves in a positive damn light, might I add, but he thinks that's reductive and insensitive, but he doesn't want to get into an attack with him because he knows that he would be in the wrong because he would be betraying his own ideology, even though he very clearly is in the wrong since he says multiple times and goes on to say and has said that he actually agrees with Hornswoggle here.
Can play a dwarf part, but I think it's important to change narratives that don't fit in today's society. And really,
Which is that narrative?
It might be better
What's the-
if dwarves
sir-
just exist
sir,
in
pardon
normal
me.
roles everywhere, because they do exist.
What was
in
so
real
bad
life.
about the way...
Yeah, what is the narrative today? What exactly is the narrative? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a fairy tale. It's not like it's going back and like rewriting history in terms of like, oh, dwarves back in the Snow White days were treated horribly. There were no Snow White days. Snow White wasn't real. It's a fairy tale. Now, granted, it's a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, and while I've never read it, I can assume life probably didn't particularly end very well for the dwarves on account of, well, life doesn't end for anybody very well in Grimm story tales, but it probably didn't end badly for them because they were dwarves. It just ended badly for them because they were German.
Dwarves were depicted in Snow White. Have I missed something?
Well, listen, I'm not here to talk about...
That's what I'm kind of wondering as well.
I don't represent Disney, but I'm just saying I think I see their point of view.
What's their point of view? What was so bad about the depiction of the dwarves?
Why are you
What's the
so
point of view?
upset about a movie changing with the times and moving forward?
Because I think that, honestly, with great respect...
there is real news we could be discussing.
No, but this is real news if you're a dwarf actor who are now out of work because of virtue-signaling idiots.
But you're just...
And there it is, out of work because of virtue-signaling idiots. These people have tried so hard. We want to make the world so inclusive. We want to make the world a better place for everyone. And in doing so, you have literally harmed everyone. Yes, it started with the attack on the straight white male, and yeah, whatever. I don't really want to get into that because I don't really care about that. Let's be honest. Us straight white boys, we've been doing fine for a while, and we're going to continue to do fine because we're just better than a whole lot of you. I joke, I kid. The point is, in their effort to make everything more inclusive, they've actually diluted, or diluted, to say that properly, everything to the point where now, midgets, I'll say it, midgets are feeling the pressure. It's not good for them. They can't exactly get good roles nowadays, and they might be forced to take roles on TV shows where they have to use derogatory terms like midget just to make ends meet because they can't get good, respectable roles in a Disney film. I know that's kind of an oxymoron because there's no such thing as a respectable role in a Disney film given that it's modern Disney. All these little people actually probably saved themselves like a lifetime of heartache for having to, be in a Disney production, so this is probably better for them in the long run, but not for the reason that South Miami Homo here is saying.
Saying that everything has to be rewritten to be inclusive,
as a cheap
when in
shot.
fact it's not inclusive at all.
No, you're using Dylan as a cheap shot to attack a Wokey.
I don't think Dylan feels I'm using him as a cheap shot. And what I would say about the Wokey thing is this. I have spent the last year listening to people tell me only gay actors should play gay parts. Only Welsh actors, so Michael Sheen, should play Welsh characters. And so on, and so on, and so on.
Which is a fundamentally retarded point of view because that defeats the purpose of acting. You want to know what acting is? Pretending to be something else. So here's the dealio. If you're not, American, let's say you're British or something, but you need to play an American role, you go out there and you do it. Or should Hugh Jackman not allowed to be Wolverine in Deadpool 3 because Hugh Jackman's Australian in real life and Wolverine, unfortunately, is a Canadian?
There's a nuance.
But the moment we have dwarf roles, which are the most famous dwarf roles in Hollywood history, then the only people apparently who can't play them are dwarf actors.
Weren't dwarf
and
roles.
I see there
It's a cartoon,
stinking
Piers.
woke hypocrisy.
It has not changed. It was a cartoon. Those weren't actually dwarfs in the movie. They were drawn, okay? So firstly...
They were drawn...
Yes, there were dwarves in the movie. Cartoon dwarves. And again, dwarves in the Snow White movie weren't dwarves like we think of them now. They weren't, midgets. I mean, they were just magical creatures like Gimli from Lord of the Damn Rings.
As dwarfs.
No, that is...
But it's a story about dwarves, sir.
Dwarfs.
Well, they shouldn't be called that. They should be called...
They shouldn't be called dwarves.
No, they should be called people with dwarfism.
They shouldn't be called...
What's wrong with being called dwarves?
They shouldn't be called dwarves. They should be called people with dwarfism. Are you guys going to go see that movie? Are you going to pay top dollar opening box office Friday night to go to the new Disney movie, Snow White and the Seven People with Dwarfism? Like, does this dude hear himself? How do you function in day-to-day life saying dumb shit like this and not think, maybe I'm the retarded one? Like, do you get to a point where you're so retarded that you don't know you're retarded? Is that how it works? Thankfully, your boy here ain't retarded, so I don't know if that's actually how it works. But if so, at least homeboy here has a built-in excuse that would explain his haircut.
Called dwarves?
Nothing, but that's not the correct
That's the
term.
story.
Dylan, apparently you're not allowed to call yourself...
Dylan can call himself whatever.
Apparently, Dylan, you're not allowed to call yourself dwarves, apparently.
I would love to hear, what should I call myself, sir?
I think you should call yourself whatever you feel comfortable with, but as a person...
He calls himself a dwarf.
Well, that's great.
I know I said I've seen this already, but still, just the matter-of-fact way that he says it right here. Well, you call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. A dwarf. Like, how thick are you?
Dwarf.
Good for you. I'm happy.
So now, sir, let me pause that. So it shouldn't be called Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It should
Listen,
just be
I
called
do not want to
Snow
get
White.
cancelled
So are
because
you saying-
Boom, there it is. That's, in my opinion, the most important part of this video. I don't want to get canceled. He's afraid that if he disagrees with his dwarf homeboy here, that he's going to get canceled. But the thing is, you're the one that created cancel culture. You brought this on your damn self. So now, if you do get canceled, which frankly, I hope doesn't happen, I'm not an advocate for cancel culture. I think canceling people is sheer ridiculousness. However, you at least realize the problem that you've created. You just probably don't realize that you and your ilk have created it. He doesn't want to get canceled for speaking ill of the dwarf homie here, but that's exactly what could happen because the society that he has bred and that his ilk has bred in wanting to create this more inclusive society. Inclusive by exclusion.
I think your point of view is more important than mine right now. But what I'm annoyed about...
He thinks the dwarf man's point of view is more important than his. No. That's not the case. Well, I mean, okay, in this particular instance, it is the case. That's because Dwarf Homeboy is right, not because Dwarf Homeboy is a dwarf. And that's what we need to come to realize, is that people's point of views are the most important when they are the correct point of views. And anyone that thinks the South Miami homo here has a freaking correct point of view, you're insane. You're up your rocker. I hope you're watching this video despite the fact that it wasn't made for you. Maybe you're learning something. You might not like my delivery. It's a bit abrasive, but let's be honest, some people are going to get a kick out of that, so grow a sense of humor.
His peers trying to take a cheap shot at someone that believes in society moving forward.
Yeah, I'm actually exposing the hypocrisy of the woke mentality of only gay people can play gay parts, only trans actors can play trans parts, and so on and so on and so on.
I think we want to get to a place where everyone can play
Snow
every
White
role.
and the Seven Dwarves has to be cancelled because you're not allowed to have dwarf
You
actors.
should be happy, Piers, because it means that now you can play your dream role of Grumpy.
I will give him that. That was a pretty clever line. Like, I don't want to give him credit for much because, you know, he sucks, but that's how you know your boy is still impartial and objective. That was a pretty good shot.
Dylan?
Piers, I will agree with the mindset of it's not right. I don't know. James seems to be in partial agreement with me on the dwarf actors and the roles with that these should be, but I don't, on the other stuff, I can't speak on that, obviously. I'm focused fully on the dwarf community really losing roles in these films.
Yeah, I think James started
with all the SAG strikes, with all the writer strikes, and the actor strikes.
I do agree with you, and I think all I'm trying to say is that I think it's a nuanced conversation, and there's a few different points of view that are valid. And
no, there aren't a few different points of view that are valid. The point of view that is valid is the point of view that dwarf homies have been losing roles because of a world that idiots like this guy here have created. I don't remember his name, like James Barr or something like that. I don't really want to dignify him by giving him his real name because, again, I've been calling him, you know, South Miami homo this whole time. That's pretty much what it boils down to, so we're going to keep calling him that. Oh yeah, it says right here in the YouTube thing, James Barr. So yes, he does not have a good point. There's not multiple points of view. There's the point of view that he and his own have stolen these roles from people, I almost said people of color, from little people, from dwarves, because they don't want to be offensive to dwarves. There's nothing more offensive than taking food out of these little people's mouths. Now, granted, it probably takes less food to fill them, well, you know, for obvious reasons. That being said, there's no other argument here than dwarf homie is right.
ultimately, in my experience as a gay man, the reason we're upset about gay people not getting gay roles in movies is because we're not getting straight roles as well. And until we...
What does he mean you're not getting straight roles as well? Gay people have gotten straight roles all the time. Ellen Page, before she transitioned to Moron Page, you know, played straight characters all the damn time. Neil Patrick Harris is known, he's probably the most famous gay in the world, and he is known for playing straight womanizing roles at that. Sharon Stone's one of them gays. She plays plenty of straight roles. What are some others? I mean, those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But those are three pretty big names. Neil Patrick, tell me, everyone knows Neil Patrick Harris is straight. Gay, but Dr. Horrible or Barney Stinson, you know, those are some pretty straight characters.
It's unfair that those roles are taken away from us. So, in that respect,
what's that got to do with dwarf actors? Because they can't play regular-sized parts.
I think Peter Dinklage's original point is that he would like to see more dwarves in films in general, not just playing dwarfs.
In general, literally, a person of my stature should be able to go out for the same as a 6'5", 200-pound human. But it's just not that way. And I'm okay with that. In reality, I'm okay with that. It's understandable to me.
Seems like he's got a pretty firm grasp on reality right here. I'm glad someone with such tiny hands can grasp things so firmly, because he clearly understands, he knows he cannot go out and play the part of Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's what makes Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito so funny. The fact that they are twins, but, you know, not identical twins, and there's a very clear visual difference. That's where half the comedy comes from. Hornswoggle here recognizes that. He will never be a Bruce Willis. He will never be a Harrison Ford. He will never be an Arnold Schwarzenegger, because he just was not dealt that hand. But you know what he can do? Go out and play roles like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Except for now he can't, because Disney does not allow actual dwarves, because that could be offensive. Look, if you guys want to watch the full thing, you can. It's on YouTube. I think we're going to cut it there. I think I've very much made my point. Really, I think that the woke moron on the right-hand side of the screen made all of our points for us very easily. Like, if ever there was a real good reason not to follow this left-leaning mentality, this woke progressive mentality when it comes to film and when it comes to art in general, this dude is like the poster child for, oh, I don't want to end up like him. He just seems miserable. He's also not able to logically hold his own in a conversation with the dwarf, you know, someone who actually knows what he is speaking about. He would rather instead just take pot shots at Piers Morgan. And I get it. You don't like Piers Morgan? That's all right. He can be incredibly abrasive, especially for a British person. I don't know if I've ever seen a British person that abrasive, except for maybe, what's her name from Harry Potter that, you know, made Harry, write in the journal and then he had to bleed all over his head. Umbridge, that's right. Dolores Umbridge. Probably the most unlikable British person of all time. Also, you know, incredibly fake and fictional. But you know what? So are the dwarves in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Fake and fictional. But now real dwarf actors don't actually get to play them. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below. Or let me know on Twitter where you can find me at BoltTheWord. And please do subscribe. I am a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day. I think this counts as nerdy news. It has to do with Disney and film. I don't know. Let me know. Remember, it's all here in the nerdosphere. And this has been Words of Paradise.